The video is by, I don't know if anybody's ever seen Ali G. It's Sacha Baron Cohen, sort of in disguise. I do not recommend a lot of his work at all. But some years ago, in his alter ego of Ali G, he interviewed somebody called Professor Solis, who at the time was head of gender research in London. And he's often been criticised for his comments his characters make through what you might call obvious satire. But he exposes people's ignorance and prejudice. So I'm going to show you a little clip by way of a lead-in to Caroline. But many of us know Caroline. She lived in the village for many, many years. Sadly, she moved away just about the time we came. I don't think it was personal. But of more recent times, Caroline has been able to come back with Barbara and to be very much part of our church, which is fantastic, so we see them each week. So I'm just going to play you now a little lead-in video, I hope. Well, here we go. That was for you. How to cope with a woman flying an aeroplane.
Kasha, check this. Today we is talking about women. I is with none other than Sue Lee. She's the director of the Center for Gender Research. And we is going to be talking about ladies. Now, 1 in 2 people in the country is a woman. And you've got to know about them. Women, they're important, aren't they?
They indeed are. Very important. As important as men.
Which is better, man or woman?
Well, equality is not about being better.
But which one is better?
I don't think either is better.
But one must be a little bit better.
In what respect?
Like, you know, in the way that something is worse and something is better. Do you think there will ever be a female prime minister?
Well, there has been one.
When?
Margaret Thatcher.
No, she wasn't prime minister.
Yes?
She was the defense minister.
No, she was prime minister.
Do you think another woman will be allowed to slip through?
I mean, the president of the United States, who is a woman.
Do you think a woman should be able to have any job?
I think they should be able to have any job.
Would you feel safe though if you knew a woman was flying your plane?
I don't feel safe if a woman is flying. Do you feel safe being driven by a woman?
No. She would start nattering or thinking about things and then forget to fly the plane.
Prejudice, you know, because there's no evidence that women are just as reliable workers as men are.
I did think you would enjoy that. And it's going to be Caroline who's going to come now and to speak to this.
Come and defend myself.
So, well, you have just to press that for your pictures when you want.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much. There we are. Well, that was me. Back in the 1980s, that was me. I was a female airline pilot for 20 years, and for much of that time I was an airline captain with British Airways. That was the aeroplane that I mainly flew and was a captain of. It's called an Embraer 145. That's me doing the walk around check. And that's the inside of the cockpit. People will...
Caroline, just move your microphone a little bit away from
Ah, there we are. Shall I pop it on here?
Yeah, no, well, it's
a bit far away
just
then.
hold it, but
Not too close. There we are. So that's the inside of the cockpit. Me in the cockpit. Just a few photos. Oh, and that's back to the early days. So can I get back on there? Oh no. There we are. Right. Yes. So, like I said, female pilot for 20 odd years, and yes, it was unusual. I was the only female captain at Cardiff Airport for most of the time that I was flying there. And I did fly out of other airports as well, and I always tended to be the only female there. So yes, it was unusual, and yes, it did cause a reaction. I've got so many stories I could tell you, but I've just chosen a few. The first was my final flight test to get my airline transport pilot's license. I'd done the medical, I'd been to the university, done all the studying, it was hard, passed all the exams, and done all the simulator flight training, been on the light aeroplanes. Now it was my very final flight test, which has to be conducted by an examiner from the Civil Aviation Authority. So the examiner I was given was an ex-RAF fighter pilot. He'd retired, he had a handlebar moustache. He was completely just what you'd imagine. And he walked into the room, looked me up and down, snorted, and said, "I don't believe little girls should fly planes." So there was a tumbleweed moment as we both lined one another up. And then I just sort of chose to ignore the comment, because I thought, well, lucky for me and unlucky for you. For some unknown reason, I just had been blessed with an uncanny ability to fly an aeroplane. So I thought, I'll just go and show you then. So off we went, and I think against his better judgment, he had to pass me. So I got my airline transport pilot's license that day. In those days, you couldn't just get an airline job though. Even though you got the airline transport pilot's license, you couldn't just walk into an airline and get yourself a job. So you had to get 1,500 hours flying time under your belt. And there were various ways to do it, but I chose to get my flying instructor's rating and become a flying instructor. So once again, as you could probably imagine, that caused quite a reaction too on many occasions. I have to say that most of the young lads that came in for trial flying lessons and to learn to fly, I very quickly got their confidence and they were on side. They just pick up that you know what you're doing, and so fair play to them. They got on with it. But there was one particular flying lesson that was very eventful, so I thought I'd share that with you. It was a lovely lady. She must have been in her 60s, I should think, and her family had bought her, probably even for her 60th birthday present, a trial flying lesson experience. She turned up for her lesson, and you could tell right from the get-go she was really nervous. And then you could really tell that her nerves were not improved when I was introduced to her as her flying instructor. But she was just too polite to say anything. So she seemed to cover her nerves by just talking incessantly about anything pink and fluffy, her grandchildren, her holidays, her house, her pets. And I actually couldn't get a word in edgeways. For a trial flying lesson, you'd normally lead the person out to the aeroplane, explain about the walk-round check. You'd ask them where they lived, would they like to fly over their house. You'd ask them all sorts of questions, and then you'd explain to them how to handle the aircraft and would they like to have a go. It just became completely obvious that I just wasn't going to be able to communicate with this lady at all. So I strapped her in and off we went for our 20-minute trial flying lesson. Took her around a scenic spot, kept trying to point things out while I was hearing about her latest trip to the Maldives. So I just got on and flew the aeroplane. Took it back to the airport. Had just called up on air traffic control to get clearance to come into land when the engine started coughing and spluttering. I was like, what's going on here? This was a single engine aircraft. And then the engine failed. And I managed to feather the propeller. At this point, I would have normally turned to my passenger and said, look, we have got a bit of an emergency here, but don't worry, I've got it under control. But we were still halfway through how her grandchildren loved the rides and things. So I was like, okay, I haven't got time. So I had to put out a mayday call and talk to air traffic. They cleared the circuit for me. I was looking down at the airport and I thought, aeroplanes just turn into incredibly good gliders, to be fair, but there is only one way you're going, and that is down. So you've got to work out your trajectory and your flight path down. And I thought, I reckon I can make the runway from here. We're not going to have to land in a field. Well, we should be able to make the runway. So they had cleared the circuit for me. And so down we came, did a nice touchdown. But of course, all the emergency services have come out. You've got lights going off all around you. But we're still halfway through. One of her grandchildren is just starting primary school. And they had to tow me in, of course, because I've got no means of being taken off the runway. Towed in, taken out, parked outside the engineer's office, you know. And she got out, said, "Thank you very much for a lovely flight," and off she went. So to this day, I think she was completely unaware.
Probably not
at all. Oh dear.
Today.
It turned out the reason for the engine failure was there was sand in the bowsers. The bowsers all had to be cleared. They just had a contaminated load of aviation fuel delivered, and so that's what caused it. There was another one airborne at the time, and they called it back straight away, and that had sand in the tanks too. So yeah, which is really unheard of. Very bad form. Yeah, but there we are. We all lived to survive the day. The other thing I did a lot of was transport flights. It's an air ambulance job, and I got a lot of my 1,500 hours towards my airline licenses by doing that. And with that, you'd sadly have somebody who died who'd offered to be a donor. Now, what happens next, or certainly then, I mean, we're talking a long time ago now, but certainly back in those days, what would happen is the surgeon that wanted to transplant the heart into the new person also wanted to be the surgeon that removed the heart, because I suppose they wanted to make sure that it was the right length and that it was a heart that they were happy to transplant. So I would get a phone call. I would fly to Stansted Airport because it was near Papworth, where all the heart transplants were happening in those days. I'd pick up the surgeon and the theatre team. I'd fly them to where the donor's body was. They would collect not only the heart, but they would remove all the other organs that would be donated. I would fly them back to Stansted. They'd go off, transplant the heart, and I would spend the rest of the night flying through the night, dropping off all of the other organs around the country to where people were waiting to have the operation. So I did a lot of that work. But there was one occasion when I turned up and out came the team from the ambulance to get on the aeroplane, and the surgeon just stopped in his tracks and looked at me, and he just kept saying, "Where's the pilot? Where's the pilot? Where's the pilot?" And I was going, me. And he was sort of looking at me, "Where's the pilot? Where's the pilot?" And he wouldn't even look at me, and he wouldn't engage with me at all. And so he was then on his phone going, "I am not getting on this aeroplane." And he said, "I won't even let my wife drive my car. There's no way I'm having a female pilot." And he just would not budge. And so they were running out of time by this time, because I'd got a flight plan in, and we'd got airports, because often where the donor was, it was often in the middle of the night, and often the airport you were flying to would have normally been closed, but they would open it up specially just to let your flight in. So everything's all set up around the country, and he's just standing there like a stubborn donkey saying, "I am not getting on this flight." Because it was all single crew. I didn't even have cabin crew with me. It was just you. So you would get on, you would do all the safety drills as emergency exits, make sure you know how to undo your seatbelts, life jackets under you, you know, all of that stuff. I'd have to do all of that, and then you just jumped in the face through the airplane. So yeah, he was not budging. But in the end, I think the poor NHS manager on the other end of the line must have been threatening to sue him, because I heard him saying, "Well, forget suing me, I'll be suing you if anything happens to me," and then stomped on the aeroplane, and on he got. And he just wouldn't even engage with me, even when I was doing the emergency drills. He just looked straight past me. But anyway, we did manage the flight there and the flight back, and nobody got sued. So he did actually end up apologising to me at the end, which was fair enough, but yeah. So that was some of the sort of worst experiences, if you like, as well as some of the better ones. Right, where did I get to? Oh yes. The other thing that happened to me was that as an airline pilot, you do get tested every 6 months. And I don't really know of any other job that's like that, because basically if you don't pass, then you lose your job. And they take you through all the emergency drills on a simulator and make sure that you can handle the situation. And then at the end of it, you obviously either passed and failed, but also you get a write-up. And on that, if you are a first officer still, you'll get an assessment as to whether they think you're suitable for command. And mine would always say at the bottom, now ready for command, suitable for command, would be an excellent commander, all of these things. And then I'd be waiting for the phone call to come through to go for my interview. And other people who joined the airline about the same time as me, with the same sort of experience, they'd be getting their phone calls and they'd be going off, and I'd be thinking, oh, strange, I was happy doing my job anyway, but I did keep thinking, should be about time, anytime soon. I finally got the phone call. So off I went for my interview. I sat down, and you just can't imagine these kind of conversations going on nowadays, but I sat down. And they said, right, Caroline, we are going to apologise to you because you should have been up for command quite a long time before this. But we have been delaying it, and we've been delaying it because we're quite nervous about having a female captain. And they said, the trouble is it's the two things we're very concerned about is, one, how are male first officers going to cope having a female captain, having a female boss? And the second thing is we're really worried what passengers are going to think about having a female captain. And the other problem, Caroline, is that you're very, very feminine.
It was your fault, you said you were...
I did. So... I am. Yes, last time I checked, I very much was, yes. So anyway, so they said, we've considered it, we've decided to give you a try, but we would just like you to consider, do you think that you could try being a little bit more macho, a little bit more masculine in the way you go about things? So of course I just went, just give me the job. Just give me the job. So off I went thinking, well, what a load of rubbish. I mean, how on earth can you be? You know, you just got to be you in life, haven't you? So, yeah, I never, ever, ever had any problems with any of my air crew. They were always lovely. And they know, there's like a mutual respect. You each know the training you've gone through, how much it takes to get there. It's not the sort of job where just because daddy owns the airline you can get yourself a job, and my daddy didn't own the airline. And even if daddy got you the job, you'd have to keep it, and every 6 months you get tested by various different people, including the Civil Aviation Authority on occasion. So no, everybody knew how tricky it was to do the job, and everybody had mutual respect. And I mean, sometimes you'd be faced with a situation where it would be a captain's only landing because the crosswind conditions weren't suitable for a first officer to land the aeroplane. So you check the weather for landing, and you just have to say to your first officer, oh, it's going to be over your limit, so I obviously have to take this landing. And you know, I can remember one time coming in to land, and it was a tricky old landing, and it was nasty old conditions. And I just squeaked it onto the runway really nicely. And it was a big macho bloke sitting next to me, who everybody would have felt very confident being the captain, but he didn't have the experience yet. And he just turned to me and he went, "Can I have your babies?" So, yeah, never had any problems. And the one area Yeah, I must admit, I did. You heard it all the time. To the point of being boring, that you'd hear people the passengers getting on the flight going, it's female pilot, female pilot, female pilot. You could hear it all going on. And the cabin crew were always so defensive of me. Yes, she is. What are you going to do about it? And always really defending me. So it was absolutely fine. I didn't really have any major problems like that. But I do have to confess, there was one occasion when I really let the slide down. It was a really horrible, snowy, icy night out in Dublin, and nobody was being able to get airborne. The slot times were horrendous. I'd got all my passengers boarded, and we were sitting there, and I was just having to keep repeating on the PA, really sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we're still experiencing delays. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything different, and giving out free tea and coffee and trying to keep everybody placated. And then suddenly, a message came through from air traffic control. British Airways, whatever our flight number was, would you be able to get airborne in 10 minutes? And I'm like, yes, we can. So I told the cabin crew, they got everything ready, but the one thing I had to check before we could go was that we were right now on the edge of our limit for the de-icing fluid that had been put on the aircraft. And it's obviously majorly important that you get that right, because ice building up on the wings means that you just won't fly, which is going all the wrong way and you just won't lift off. So I jumped out my stairs. I'm going to go check the wings are still okay. Rush down the stairs, check the ice. Yeah, we're great. Run back up the stairs. I had de-icing fluid on my shoes. Right, ran up the steps, slid straight across, in front of all my passengers, straight into the cloak cupboard. Cabin crew having to pick the captain out. But we did take off, we did meet our slot time and we got away all right. So, I'm just saying that if ever you find yourself faced with the issue of a female pilot flying your plane, don't tell her little girls shouldn't fly planes. Don't refuse to board. Don't tell her to behave a bit more masculine. Don't even panic if she skids across the floor in front of you and you have to pull her out of the cupboard. It seems that the best way to cope with having a female pilot fly your plane is to chatter non-stop at her out the flight. But just note, she will be highly trained. She will be very experienced. She will have been tested every 6 months. So if a situation does occur, you might be blissfully unaware, but she will get you home safe and sound.
Well done, Caroline. Now, we're not going to let her escape unless we've given her the chance, or you the chance, for a couple of questions.
Yes,
So,
Yes, of course.
as with any doctor, when they're on an aeroplane, if there is an emergency that has to do with health, they say, are you a doctor? And immediately the person can go and...
Yes.
If there is an emergency on an aeroplane and both of them are unable, and you say, I'm a qualified pilot, do they allow you to fly?
They do.
What do you have to prove?
No, you didn't. They would just be too grateful to have somebody put their hand in it. My daughter always laughs and says she's just flown to Geneva to go skiing today, and she said, I always feel really strange, because my husband's a pilot as well, and she said, I always feel really strange going with my boyfriend, because normally I take 2 spare pilots with me.
The other thing, I am Greek, and the Greek Air Force happens to be one of the best in NATO.
Yes.
You may probably know.
Yes, we do.
And they do have female pilots.
Yes,
and
they
they
do.
are mean.
Yes. Yes, they're very good. I know, to become a fighter pilot is something else again, really epic, yeah, very good.
Congratulations on everything you've done. Very inspirational.
Are you still flying?
I'm not. No, I stopped flying when I had my daughter. I'd flown for 20 years, and the British Airways were pulling out of Cardiff, and they were relocating to Newcastle at the time. And I just thought, oh, we live in this beautiful place. You know, my husband had to move to Newcastle because I was on maternity leave at the time. And but EasyJet were recruiting, and so he got recruited by EasyJet, so he flies for them still. Yeah, I gave up at that point. Yeah. Suzanne.
Well, what was me? I was just going to ask, your faith, how is that? Have you had any sort of incidences that where your faith has been really
Yes, yes.
significant?
Yeah, it has. I've had a couple actually. Yes, as I think Jenny mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the church here, and for the first 38 years of my life, I was definitely an atheist. But I kept having very strange situations happen to me, lots of dreams, lots of premonitions, very sort of supernatural stuff, and I just used to try and block it out and put it down to coincidence. I really didn't want to know. But there was one occasion where I just couldn't put it down to coincidence, and it did have a profound effect on me, and was one of the things that kind of led me to my faith, I guess. And that was, I was due to fly out of Stansted Airport with the directors of the Channel Tunnel when they were building the Channel Tunnel. And the next morning it was an early start, so I'd flown the aeroplane into Stansted the night before, stayed with friends, had a beautiful meal, gone to bed. Woke up halfway through the night with this absolute nightmare, heart pounding and everything. And in my nightmare, the aircraft engineer had done a walk around check on my aircraft, noticed it was low on oil on the starboard and the right hand engine, had refilled the oil and forgotten to put the oil filler cap on. And then I'd got airborne, not realising, and there's a thing called a Venturi effect. It's just where you get a low pressure over the top, and that causes, the low pressure causes a suction. So I'd got airborne, the Venturi effect had sucked all the oil out of the engine, which had caused the engine to fail. It was a propellered aircraft, and with the thing with a propellered aeroplane is that, especially with a two engine one, which this one was, you can fly perfectly well on one engine, but you do need to feather the propeller of the failed engine as soon as possible, because all the time it's in that position, it's windmilling and causing a huge amount of drag, which will pull you out of the sky. As soon as you feather it and turn it into the airflow, it just becomes, good airflow, and you can continue to fly then. So I'd gone to feather the propeller, but you need oil pressure to feather the propeller, and I had lost so much oil pressure I couldn't feather it. So we were being dragged out of the sky, and I'd woken up just before hitting the ground. You know, Stansted is like built up, and I could just see all these lights because it was at night, and just trying to pick a place where it was less populated, but, you know, yeah, not a nice dream. So I sort of calmed myself down. It was only a dream. And the chances of that are minuscule, because as a pilot I always do a walk around check and check these things, and a flight engineer is really good. They have to not only sign it off themselves, but they have to get a second signature. So 2 engineers have to have checked this aeroplane, then me. But I did think, note to self though, I will double check that in the morning. So the following morning comes, I'd pretty much forgotten about it, and off I went, rushing around as you do. When I got into work, my boss was there running around like a headless chicken because we were being ramp checked on my flight. Now a ramp check is when the Civil Aviation Authority just turn up, completely unexpected, uninvited. They just turn up and they're going to just check all your paperwork, make sure everything's done correctly. So the trouble with that is it always takes longer to do all your flight preparations. And this contract with the channel chief directors was a really important one because they wanted a weekly flight, but the one thing that they insisted on is that it must go on time. So Nigel, my boss, is in a right spin. So we had to take longer over the paperwork. That was done. He said, right, I'll clear them through customs. I'll take the CAA guy with me. You rush out to the aeroplane. Don't spend too much time in your checks, just get that aeroplane warm and ready to go, and then we'll load the passengers, we should be able to make our departure time okay. So I rushed out the other way, got to the aeroplane, and you know that to flight engineers have already checked your aeroplane and signed for it. So it would be very easy in a situation like that for me to just put my signature on it and go, it's all right to me, jump in and go. But I suddenly remembered the dream, and I thought, if I check nothing else, I'm going to flip in, go and check that right oil cap. And all the passengers and the CEO guy and my boss all turned up as I put my hand in there, and it was missing. I know. I know. It is amazing, and it kind of still makes the hairs in the back of the neck go. And that is what made me first start questioning. Everything else in my life I could put down to coincidences. If you try to stick your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la, that can't be. But with that, I had to start thinking, there is something else. There's something else. Somebody's looking over you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Was there maybe
And you've
one
got more?
more question?
Yes.
So many things can go wrong.
Can I just ask, how easy is it nowadays to become a female pilot?
Much easier, yes.
What about other countries? Is their attitude different?
I think most European countries, you wouldn't be able to get a job with United Arab Emirates, but most of the other airlines, yes, definitely. In fact, for a while was even quite a lot of positive discrimination, which doesn't necessarily go in your favour, because then you end up with slightly weaker candidates doing the job. When you've got to really fight for your chance to do it, you've got to feel really confident in your abilities to actually come up with the goods. But when they just say, oh, you have to have a certain quota of females, then, the quality is bound to slide a bit. But I'd say we're through that now, and very good candidates coming through.
Well, please give a round of applause. Only if you would be willing to go on a plane with Caroline. Thank you so much again, Caroline. Now, just a couple of